So for those who don't know, this is Leanne Dobson. She's from our Keller Williams neighborhood brokerage, which is in the country. She's actually the final nail that caused me to come to Keller Williams. And which I've never looked back from that way. She's been in the business for
Close to 20 years.
yeah, I was gonna say close to 20 years.
No, I was with Royal LePage for 10 years.
And she's just had her son come on to join her. And
Fantastic.
yeah,
Yes.
and she is like our Ignite guru. So she's the one that leads and drives this program at Keller Williams neighborhood and has helped us at Portfolio with what we need to do and how do we need to do it in order to get off the ground. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now you know a bit about me. I just want to get to know a bit about you. So it's Claudia.
Yes,
Why don't we start with you?
yes. So I've been 6 years in relocation for a relocation company and completed my courses in October and joined at the end of January.
Ah, great.
And so brand new to this business.
Yes.
And I love it here. The people are amazing.
Great. Have you done any deals yet?
No, I
Okay,
haven't.
all right. Because I'm just trying to get everybody's
Yeah, a
negotiation
few things
experience.
going on.
So,
I have helped with leases.
Yeah,
before,
okay,
with
good.
the relocation, but
Good.
I would be on my own now.
Okay. All right. Super. Welcome. And you are
My name is Goran.
Goran?
Goran, yes. I have just started as well.
Okay.
So no deals, no leads, nothing. I have had just negotiation with my wife.
Uh-huh.
I'm kidding, of course.
No, you're not, because
I
I was going to
have-
actually make that point in a
I
minute.
have an immense experience with life insurance in the
Okay.
past.
So sales, you've done sales.
Yes, yes, and I have completely different, another job. But this is my focus right now.
Ah. And what made you pick real estate as opposed to insurance or?
I used to work insurance in my previous country, not in Canada.
Oh, okay.
And I always had in mind to trade real estate,
Okay.
but in my country this is not as challenging as here.
Ah.
So when I came here, I decided to enroll into real estate college. Of course, I needed some time to improve my English, and
Yeah. Oh, your English is great.
when
Yeah.
I realized that I can start, I did that. So
Wonderful. Where are you
right
from?
now I'm here. I'm from Belgrade. This is Serbia,
Ah, Serbia.
middle of
I
Europe.
was in Croatia a couple of years ago. It's beautiful there.
Yes, it
It's
is.
lovely.
I was 3 months ago again.
Ah.
There is a few parts in Croatia that I adore, and I have great friends there. So
Yeah. Oh, that's fun.
I recommend that
I
seaside
would love to go back,
because
yeah.
it's
It was
really
lovely.
the best part of Europe.
It is, it's lovely. It's
Yes, you
beautiful.
think so?
Yeah, yes, yes. Croatia, Greece as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Greece is on my list
Part
too.
of Montenegro is amazing
Yeah,
as well.
I heard that too. I think we drove through it to
And
get,
that's it. Everything else is completely different, but not
Yeah.
so beautiful.
yeah,
Been to Greece.
Greece
That
and
one.
Croatia
yeah.
are number one, in my opinion.
My new stepfather, my family is kind of interesting. My new stepfather is Albanian.
Mhm.
He keeps trying to get us to go over there. Now, I know they're a long way behind everybody else in development. and stuff,
I don't
but
know, but I have heard so many beautiful things about that coast as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
But I didn't check.
That's okay. Okay, and who do we have beside you there? Sorry, you're just on a mouthful of.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, and
Hi, Pam.
I'm very new.
You're very new. Are you licensed yet, or? Okay, great. And, sorry, you are
New guy in the room.
new guy in the room.
My name's Mike Terry. I've been in the business for approximately 8 years. I'm reigniting
Ah,
my business.
48?
Yeah, 48 years, wouldn't that be nice? Looking this good at 48?
I know this business, sometimes it feels like 48. Okay, today we're talking about negotiation. This is sort of what they have on the agenda, talking about some negotiation tips, points that you do negotiate in a deal, and the 3 Ps of negotiation. Do you guys have anything else about negotiation, any burning questions that you've always had about the topic that you would like me to address? No, okay.
I don't have experience, in the negotiation.
You actually do, and that was gonna be my point, because I think Gordon said
In
it.
real life.
In real life, we do it all the time,
Mhm.
especially if you have kids, especially if they're teenagers, or with your spouse. You're always negotiating, because if I read you actually the definition that they have for negotiation here, it's bargaining, a give and take process between two or more parties, each with its own aims, needs, and viewpoints, seeking to discover a common ground and reach an agreement to settle a matter of mutual concern or resolve a conflict. We do that all the time in every day. I mean, if I ask Pam to go get me a glass of water, that's a request. But if I asked her to please go get me a glass of water with some lemon, and there was no lemon, we'd have a conversation and it would turn into a negotiation. So as soon as you're trying to get someone to do something that you're, especially, there's supposed to be common ground, but if there isn't, it requires more negotiation. And it's about setting expectations and creating a win-win process where she goes and gets me that glass of water, either because it makes her feel good or because I can motivate her to do that. And negotiation is a lot about, it's all about understanding other people's motivation and their emotions around the issue, what that common ground is. In our business, the goal is to make the deal happen, to get a signed contract. That's our main goal, but there are lots of ways to go about that. We not only end up negotiating with the seller's agent, but we're also negotiating with our own client. Because as we act as a go-between, we have to set expectations on both sides. Because if we're not in sync with both sides, it can fall apart even when we go back to our own clients with like a counteroffer or something like that. So I think when we talk about negotiation, not to get hung up with, negotiation has skills that everybody can learn. It's about talking, it's about communication. That's ultimately what it's about. And your listening skills are as important as your speaking skills in that sense. Okay, we're gonna start with this handy-dandy little video.
Hi, I'm Josh Anderson. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I've been with Keller Williams since 2006. In 2014, we did about 200 transactions for about $60 million in volume. I grew up on a farm, so I've always seen my dad negotiating land and cows and horses. Being the youngest of four, I'm trading and negotiating with my brothers all growing up. So I've kind of done it all the time. But some people are certainly gravitate toward it and are naturally better at it than others. But I think that negotiation can definitely be learned. I think there's a lot of skills that go into being a great negotiator. I think it's learning your client. Instead of kind of assuming that you know what's important to them, really asking a lot of questions and letting them tell you what they need or want, and then speaking to the other agent and finding out what's most important to their client. And there's some agents that just don't give any. When I have an agent that I'm dealing with that's very tight-lipped, I just keep asking questions, and they give me information that they might not have otherwise given, whether it's a divorce or a death, or it's just they got relocated to some other city. And I think if you're really listening and being intentional and purposeful about listening, you'll find out exactly what's important to them or what they have to have. In certain situations, you have to be creative. We're always looking for that next little tip to window use. One of the techniques that we've used a lot, that's worked well for us, is the escalation clause. For example, if the property is listed at $250,000,
We don't really use these, so.
We might go in at $250,000 with strong terms, and in special stipulations, we might put in there that we're willing to beat the next best documented offer by $1,000 up to $263,000. And the best offer might be $261,000, so we end up getting it for $262,000. client standpoint, be willing to have a real conversation with the clients. It's not us just being realtors for them, it's us consulting and advising and really telling them, if you really want this property, here's what you have to do to get it. Everybody's got a different way of how they negotiate. And networking with other Keller Williams agents around the country, the more you hear, the more ideas you, and then you end up carrying it towards you and what you think is going to work best for you and your clients. A lot of it comes down to experience, and I think the more deals you do, the more comfortable you get with it. If you can step back from every transaction and learn something, you're going to get really good over time.
Okay, I know sometimes it can be overwhelming when you're doing your first deal because you're so wrapped up in, have you done the contract right, have you put the right things in the right space, and having the confidence to do the negotiations and not get bogged down by those details, because I think one of the most important things that he said in that video is your ability to listen and to know what it is that you're looking for. And when you're stressed and you're uptight, it's a lot harder to listen and really hear what's being said, because with the right questions, you'll get all the information that you need. So we're going to talk a little bit about tips, and I'm going to use their list here and throw in a few of my own. Their first tip, which should go without saying, but it's in here because it does need to be said, is be professional. So, you know, look professional, act professional, represent your clients well, because I have actually had vendors or sellers not do a deal because they did not like the agent that was presenting the offer. They didn't trust them. So how you act in a negotiation and how you represent your clients can actually make the difference between whether you get the deal done or not. And I said this earlier, the goal in the negotiation is?
Sign the deal.
That's it, just get the deal done, get the contract signed, and come up with a point that everybody is willing to accept. And the joy of our job is, usually when you get to that, and we are trying to create a win-win deal, I sometimes feel that nobody's ever happy. The seller always feels like they gave it away, and the buyer always feels like they paid too much. But by getting to that one, point, price and conditions that gets the deal done, it's something that's palatable to everybody. And the way to do that when you're having the conversations is always refer back to motivation. There's two parts that you're looking for when you start conversations with your clients as well as a listing agent. You're trying to understand motivation and what else, which is often a point that we don't talk about a lot. So you're trying to understand people's motivation and
Perceptions.
you're close.
Intentions?
Maybe?
Perceptions or emotions.
Oh.
As much as this is a business, and if you were dealing in commercial real estate, it's a lot less emotional than residential real estate. Half the time I think we're psychiatrists and psychologists as well as we are realtors, because that consulting role that he talks about deals a lot with emotions. And one thing I've learned in negotiating is that you can't make assumptions and you never really know what someone else is going through. So if you pick up a phone and you're in a good mood and you're calling to make an offer, talk to the other agent, and you get somebody just shit all over you on the other side of the phone, and you're like, what the hell? I often just take a step back and say, you don't know that their wife didn't just leave them. You don't know that their dog didn't just get run over by a car. You really never know what's going on in someone else's life. So before you start to react to what you first see, it's about being able to take a step back, listen to the words, and circle back to the motivation and the emotion, and try and understand where that person is coming from and why they might be the way they are. And listening is your best way to do that, and asking certain questions. I just read a book, which I didn't really think I would like, because I don't normally like this kind of stuff, but $1 Million Listing New York, Ryan Serhant. Usually I never watch those shows, the LA one, because I think they're just so dramatic. But my son James was reading the book and I decided, he said it was good, so I thought I'd pick it up. It's called Selling Sarahand, and I really, really, really enjoyed that book.
Did you?
I
Well,
really
it's on
did.
my wish list.
You know what, I have the audio version and he reads it,
Yeah.
and I found it quite inspiring. Like, it gave me a good new perspective, because I thought it'd be all frou-frou and very dramatic, but he's very entertaining, but he has some really, really good points. And one of the things that he brings up, and I guess I've always known it, but I've never seen it put in this way. And he talks about the 7 stages of emotions that buyers go through in a sale. And the reason I'm bringing that up now is because when you're negotiating and you're working with your buyer or seller, as well as the other agent, you have to factor that into the realm of emotions. So I'm gonna write it up here. We're gonna talk a little bit about what those might be.
Excited?
That's one of them, that's number 1. So first of all, people get super excitement, because they're off to buy a new house and they love this one and now we're gonna put an offer in. Then what happens?
Scared.
Okay, hold on, there's 7. You're right.
Frustrated.
That's right too. Let's put them in the order. Yeah. Okay, so fear is number 3. And the fear is that could have been, what have I done? There could have been a better deal, that type of thing. Then, sorry?
Disappointed?
Oh yeah, disappointment is number 4. Because after they're scared, they're disappointed. Is there one S? Yeah, disappointment. I don't think I spelled that right, but anyway. I think so. Did someone say frustration?
I think
Yes, yeah, that's number 2, especially in our market when they have to put in umpteen million multiple offers. Okay, so then what happens after the disappointment? The deal's done. It's
Anticipation? Remorse?
acceptance. They kind of have to, yeah.
they have to, no choice.
Yep.
Sounds like cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it's more like, well, it's done, life is short, let's just get on with it. Okay, then what happens after they've accepted it and they've sort of sat with the idea?
Maybe not excitement.
Well, you're close. Happiness. So it's like, yeah, you know what, this is gonna be great. And then the deal's done and they're ready to move in.
Exhaustion.
Relief. It's like, thank God it's actually done. So the reason I find this relevant in negotiation is because both the buyers and the sellers are going to be going through this stage at any given point in time in a transaction. And if you can recognize where they are, you're able to console them or reassure them. And this is where the psychologist part of our job comes in. And give them the confidence to keep going through to the next step. So not only do you have to understand their motivation and what it is that they really want, but you have to understand their emotional state too at the time. And then you have to be able to reflect that for the seller as well as the other agent in order to make a good negotiation happen.
I think also when you're there to guide them through those stages, especially when they are the more negative ones, and they realize it's normal, they get through it, out of it quick, faster.
Exactly, yeah. When somebody is in the fear or frustration mode, who's gonna bear the brunt of that? It's the agent. You're gonna get shit all over. And that's okay, just let it go, and the faster, I find people tend to mirror you, so if they're freaking out and you freak out back at them, it amplifies things. But if you just kind of let it wash over you and you recognize that this is a normal stage and the faster that they're allowed to sort of vent, then they'll calm down enough to listen and move to the next stage. So emotions as well as motivation are very much a part of negotiation, or effective negotiation. The other important tip is
Listening.
Yes, listen more than you talk. Really, our job is to keep our mouths shut and really absorb what's going on around us. And when you get okay with having silence in the room or giving someone time to answer, you learn an enormous amount. Never make assumptions and be okay with a little bit of silence. The last one is don't be too attached to the outcome. You're not going to win them all. And, you know, sometimes it makes sense to walk away, and that's okay. And my own personal one is you always get more with honey than vinegar. Vinegar's great on salad, and it has its spot, but for the most part, you know, you can be a happy, successful professional, and you can treat everyone with courtesy, and I find that just gets through the transaction a lot easier than, you know, I've got something to prove, and a lot of the ego that can get in the way of what we do. And I find that can really undermine a good negotiation. Any other tips that anybody would like to add?
So, I don't know if you already said this, I'm sorry, but so in negotiation and dealing with other agents, the one thing that I have found can be both supportive and a hindrance is the game playing. And I find that sometimes I come up against an agent who's gonna try the little psychological tricks on me, like, you know, and after you've been around a while, you've heard it all. And when somebody says, well, I've got another buyer who's coming in from the States, and I'm like, okay, just leave that for somebody else, please. You know, I don't want to hear those kind of, oh, well, you know, that kind of creation of fear of loss that some people, that like psychological game playing that goes on. Versus dealing with an agent who's been around a long time, who's just going to be really transparent with you and really honest and straightforward and diligently work towards actually getting it done.
Well, and I think that's gonna happen, and that comes back to the ego or different people's negotiating skills. So if somebody were to say to me, well, I have someone coming up from the States, I'm like, you know, great. You know, the market changes all the time. When you have something in writing, please let me know.
Exactly.
In the meantime, you know, we know it can sell at any time, but right now this is what we have on the table. Are you willing to look at it? You know, and so it's just, it's that whole good cop, bad cop. There are all sorts of different games that people can play, and you just have to choose not to engage in it and how to deal with it in the least.
Yeah, and I just think that if, you know, as a newer agent, if you just try to avoid those kind of strategies, I think that you'll find that you'll meet agents over the years who will grow to trust and like you, and you can do amazing things with them down the road when they just know you're straightforward. Like I just did a deal with somebody and I was like, honey, like I've been in the business longer than you've been alive. Like I've heard that a million times. I'll send you an offer, you present your offer, let's just keep it
in play.
Straightforward. Yeah,
no, they will, and you're gonna meet all types. And one thing I didn't even sort of throw on the table, which is quite a challenge for negotiation sometimes, is we live in a very multicultural society. And sometimes there are agents out there, I can't understand a word they're saying. Like, I just can't.
Don't mention this to me, please.
I know, you're fine, you're fine.
Yes, but my understanding is terrible. I'm so happy that I have you in this classroom because I'm so often faced with people I can't understand one word.
Right.
This is really terrible.
Oh, I see what you're saying, right.
No, but that's fine, because if I had a situation like that and you said to me, you know, English is my second language, you know, can you help me with that? That's fine, I would have no problem with that.
Sure.
But if you came in and went, I'd be like, excuse me? You know, you can't negotiate on a one-way road. So there's nothing wrong with having a bit of a language barrier, especially if you recognize it. But if you don't recognize it and you're like off on a tear, you're gonna leave people behind you going, sorry, what?
Or you use it to your advantage in a negative way to the others.
Yeah,
We'll see.
it can be as much of an endearing quality as it can be a hindrance. It all depends on how you present it.
Yeah.
So when I'm referring to a language barrier, I'm referring to one that's not presented as such. And if you're not conscious of it and you think the other side is understanding something that they're not, it just creates a few more pitfalls than and that's why it's really important to put everything in writing, because that clarifies an enormous amount. Okay, so the next thing we're going to address are some of the common points of negotiation. So when we're trying to do a deal, what are some of the things that we have to negotiate? What's the number one thing? Price, yeah. I don't care what else there is that we have to talk about. This one's going to be 99% of what you're going to have to deal with. Now, having said that, the terms then become your opportunity to sometimes compensate for price or improve your chances if the price is okay. So what are some of the other things that we have to negotiate as terms?
Closing.
Yeah, closing dates. What's the next thing that comes into a contract after price? Deposit. What else?
Conditions?
Yeah, so terms. What are some of the biggies for that one?
So that includes clauses?
So-
Or
So.
Yeah, so there'll be inclusions and
Inspect.
exclusions.
Inspections,
Yeah.
potential, which could lead to potential work on the property.
Yeah, so repairs are a big one that we often have to negotiate.
And then there's finance, and in a different market, sometimes there might be something called a VTB that we haven't dealt with in years, but
Yeah.
you never know.
Mhm.
Might be something to just keep in your back pocket.
Yeah,
So what does that stand for again?
oh, vendor take back.
Okay,
It's a type of financing.
yeah, no,
It's a
I couldn't
mortgage.
remember.
Yeah,
I've
it's
heard
okay.
of.
There's also, I mean, this comes up so rarely, but it's not a bad idea to have in your back pocket, is the potential, a lease back potential.
Yeah,
That has made a deal come true
Yeah.
for me, where
Yeah.
you didn't think it was ever gonna happen, but what we did was we ended up taking less money for the property than they wanted, but at least leased it back for $1 a month
mhm.
for 3 months, and that made the difference for them, and that
Yeah, 'cause
sealed the
there's-
deal.
Yeah,
But
there's
that's
carrying
becoming big
carrying
now because
costs.
of the population.
I want to come back up to price for a second, just more for the newbies that haven't done deals, because they're coming into the market. Even for most of my career, and that's almost 20 years, our market has done this. So we are very, very in tune to working in multiple offer situations. And you guys have already done offers, I think that comes before negotiation. So the rule of thumb is if you're in competition, 95% of the time you're starting at ask and going up. But, and I guess I noticed this with my son, and he's doing mostly leases, but there are the odd occasions where you're not in competition. And in our market, because it's been a little more spotty lately, that happens more frequently. And we're all sort of more in tune, or you will have learned more how to deal with competition environments versus non-competition environments. So when you're working on price on an offer, and you don't think you're going to be in competition, how do you approach that with your client?
So I think that the umbrella understanding here is that you know your values.
Yes, yes,
So-
yes.
So it's
Yes.
so important that you're really clear on what the best value or close to the best value of the property is.
Now, how would you assess that?
So
In
you
the-
have to
in the
know, you have to
quick-
know your market. So you've been to open houses, you've seen what they've sold for, you've done a really, really good CMA
Yeah.
of the, you know, of the most recent sales on the 2 or 3 streets around there, so you know what you're dealing with. And you have an understanding of what should be the best price up for the property, so that they don't end up in a situation where they don't get financing, because it
Right.
doesn't appraise.
Right, that's definitely a big one. The other thing to keep in mind is when you look at the comps and you're in an area, the townhouses are probably easier than our detached houses because they're more similar, and the
Right.
suburbs are more similar, but if you understand the percent to sale ratio, so if something is selling for 98% of ask or 97% of ask or 99% of ask, when you go to price your offer and you have to substantiate it to the other side, even when you know, when you're going into a negotiation where you're going to be probably negotiating up as opposed to starting at ask and going higher, you have to sort of come up with that price or help guide your buyer to put on a price that isn't going to leave money on the table, but that isn't going to insult the seller. So that's not a lot of, we don't get a lot of experience doing that because most of our offers aren't in a non-competition environment. So when you know your comps and you have a value in mind, then there's a strategy of, okay, how are you going to get to that number? Because it's not necessarily going to be the number that you start with. So I just bought, a client of mine just bought a townhouse in Mississauga, which is, their market's different than our market. And I was talking to my son and I said, okay, so it's listed for $819 and stuff is selling at 98% of ask. And they're all very similar units. So I said it was between 97 and 98, and I said to Jamie, so where would you suggest your buyer start? And he's like, okay, well, that would be, 98% would be like $799 or something. And I said, okay, if you're the seller and you've just already taken a big price reduction from like $849 down to $819, and somebody comes in the 7s, how do you think they're gonna react to that?
Yeah, 805 is like.
Precisely. So I said, let's just go in at 805, because in negotiation, the other #1 rule is if you can be the person not to put the first number out there, the better off you are. Because whoever puts that first number out there kind of sets the tone for the negotiation. So obviously if you're a buyer putting an offer in, you have to put that number on a piece of paper. And so what I will often do is call the other agent and try and get a sense of where the seller's at with that price. Like, how did they come up with that price? Because then you can understand if, you know, they had to fight tooth and nail to get the last price reduction and they're going to be very staunch about it. You have a rough idea of what you're going into. And so I said to Jamie, okay, don't put $799, let's put $805 and see. And he goes, but that's still really low, like. And I said, we're probably gonna end up at $850. I said, you go back and forth and we're probably gonna end up, the price that you put, is you probably plan on ending up halfway between the two.
Excuse me, the listing price was
$819.
$890.
Yeah, and so we went in at 805, and I sort of primed my buyer that there probably wasn't a lot of room, and we'd be, you know, we'd probably do really well at 815. Because I knew that the person selling hadn't already bought, and the unit was very nice, and I thought it was well priced for what it was. So the other thing you also want to try and get a sense of is what the sellers and or listing agents' negotiation style is. Because some people are like, no bullshit, let's just go straight to the bottom line. I don't want to nickel back and forth for 5 times. And other people really feel like it needs to be a hard-fought one battle and they haven't left anything on the table.
Right?
And so it's going to go back and forth 15 times.
Yeah,
And you
how do
know
I know I didn't squeeze every dollar
Yeah,
out
So
of
they
it?
feel they won a battle.
Yeah, and they just
go-
feel like they have to know that that's the best they could have done. And if you have someone like that, don't fight it. Just do the prices in little increments because you know you're gonna end up halfway between the two either. So if you understand which negotiation style you're dealing with, then you're just gonna get there via two different routes. So we put in the 805 and I was actually expecting more like an 818 price coming back. And so the agent calls me back and says, do you think 810 would do it? I'm like,
I'll do my best.
yeah, I put it down, send it back to us, I'll see what I can do. That's when you do the happy dance, when you get off the phone and go, what buyer's gonna be really happy with this? And then back you go and just take it and run. So I think when it comes to price, especially because we're not used to negotiating sort of to a midpoint, we're used to sort of going up and being the highest. When you don't find yourself in competition, try and understand what kind of seller you're dealing with in terms of whether they were gonna wanna negotiate or they just wanna get to the point. And it's the seller and the agent, because you don't know how the agent is translating how the seller, some agents will be really honest with you and some will not. And always, whatever you do, when you're putting an offer in and you're putting the first price in, just make sure you get a commitment from the other agent to give you something back in writing. Just sign it back, I don't care what it is, just don't let it die. Because once it's dead, that's a whole, you're done. But even if they sign it back with $1,000 difference, then you know what you're dealing with. So usually, after you've had that conversation, especially if you're going in, if you think your buyer is lower than they should be and you can't get them up, I will always sort of, like if I'm the one that has the bargain hunter on my hand, like my buyer is not gonna leave a penny on the table and not spend a cent more than they want, and I can't get them to understand the psychology behind the price they're putting on there because they want to feel like, you know, they started low and got them as low as they could. I will actually say to the other seller, please preface this when you present it to your buyer that, you know, to your seller that my buyer just had to start somewhere and that this is just our preliminary price and that we are more than willing to negotiate. Because you have to frame everything that you present, and we're going to talk about positioning a little further on.
So I have two questions. In the market where you have a holdback, so example, house on the market for $799. Either doesn't get offers, doesn't get what it needs to, comes back on the market at $879. So now you're actually, could potentially be in a case where you're not in multiple offers. But you know, you've seen it at $799. You know they obviously want more.
They want somewhere between $799 and $879.
Yeah, exactly. So what is the strategy from that standpoint, do you see, when talking with buyers? Because they're sort of saying, well, we didn't get this.
Okay, so it comes back to what Marie was saying about knowing the value of that property. Because if everything similar to that has been selling at $860 and they're at $879,
Yeah.
then whatever you put on paper, you're going to have to explain that number.
Yep, correct.
So as long as you can explain whatever you put on there.
And what do you do in a case where,
So but think about it for a second. So you've assessed that it's worth $860 to $865. They're at $879. Where are you going to come in?
I'm probably gonna come in right at 860.
You've given yourself no negotiating room.
I'd probably be a bit more aggressive and just say,
This is it first, because that's your negotiating style, you know,
Yeah.
first and final, that's it, take it or leave it. I'm basing it on these comps.
and it would depend, that's how I would, but it would also depend on the buyer.
Yeah.
So if they thought that even though 860 is what the market is saying and they wouldn't want it, then I might come in lower, but I've seen it where you got a multiple offer situation, it doesn't happen.
And then it does happen.
And then all of a sudden,
But once that's triggered and you're in multiples, then
then
it's a different game.
Yeah.
Whatever price you put on there is
Yeah.
a totally.
or people are just waiting, so.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
wanna get in
And-
there before, so.
But, and that's it, and that's where, you know, you count on the other agent to say, yeah, there are 3 people circling or 2 people circling, because you have to prep your buyer for the fact that they might wind up in competition. So you're having a nice little conversation about them saying, okay, the value's about 860, I think we can go in at 855 to give ourselves a little wiggle room and see where they come back at. But there are 3 people circling, and this could be a totally different scenario.
You
In a
wouldn't,
split second.
you wouldn't think about like an 8:30 kind of in that scenario, 8:25, 8:30, and
Is it multiple?
it's still a respectable number, if it's worth 860, right?
Is it multiple or?
No, there's no
Yeah,
multiples,
there's
it's
no
been
multiples.
relisted at
Yeah, I would think 840, that's where I would have been.
Would you?
Probably,
I'd
yeah.
probably give it
Go
more
even more.
and just see where they come back
Yeah.
at, and then
Yeah.
come back in and,
Okay,
Yeah.
you know, make it happen.
Because that's.
And again, I guess it's like reading the agent, right? I mean, I kind of
Totally.
read the,
Yeah.
agent of the open house. So, but then that goes to, so I've got a situation where the lot is a pie-shaped lot. It's like almost double width. So it's like a 95 foot, whereas most of them are 50s in there. The physical location is good, the actual location, not so hot, because it's right sitting on a 427. And it is like, I'm at that stage where it's a gut, it's not just a.
Is
let's
it
talk
land
about-
value only?
Personally, yes.
Okay.
And the catch is that there isn't anything, there's only been one that sort of was a gut job in a nicer area, and I went for 6, and it didn't go on the market, like it was, I found it through Geo. So the agent did an offer night, last night, obviously didn't get anything because it's still sitting and no offers.
What was it
anytime.
priced at?
$749.
Okay.
oh,
And we're saying maybe 6, because you probably have to put at least 200 into this. I mean, it's still on the fuses and the whole bit. And when we had the conversation, he was just sort of like, oh, you know, like, we're pretty good that this is the value.
So did you ask for the comps?
No.
I always ask for the seller's comps.
Okay.
Because it's part of understanding what their value equation is and how they came up with what they came up with. They will have done them.
So you go to the seller
Yeah.
agent and ask,
And you say, you know, I've been looking at the comps and I'm talking to my buyer and I really want to help make a deal here, but I'm having a problem understanding how you came up with this price. Can you help me out with your comps? Just so that I can position it properly at my end.
Okay.
And then if they're full of shit and they haven't done their homework, you're going to find out really
Because I mean, the
fast.
houses in the area, like you said, they're in the 8s,
Right.
9s, like, but they're not like this. They're not like this, like it's, like I
Right.
said, it's the land.
Because, and it comes down to saying you've got to justify whatever price you put on there. And if you say, okay, well, I'm kind of looking at this and I was looking at this comp, and if you had to salvage this house and do the renovations, change the panel, do this, that's, you know, $300,000, you're priced over the market, it doesn't make any sense. How are you seeing this happen?
Right.
Like, you need to get their buy-in and understand where they're coming at. Because if you're explaining this and you put that in your offer presentation and say, you know, this is how we've priced it, and then their agent can't refute it because
Because
it
we're
makes
thinking going in at
sense.
6, but I don't want to do the paperwork just to do, you know what I mean, when he's basically said.
Yeah, well, and that's it, you don't,
Yeah, we're good at 749.
so then, but then you just say, look, this has been our rationale, if we come in at 6 and we do this work, we're gonna end up here.
Yeah.
I don't wanna waste everybody's time.
Yeah.
Here's our logic, talk to your seller if it's worth us coming in. And then you also have to stipulate, is 6 it, or are you willing to negotiate?
Yeah, and so, does that change anything because it's got a probate clause in it?
Not so much. I
Okay.
mean, you can wait till the probate is done, or you can accommodate the offer
okay.
with the probate clause.
Okay.
That's not gonna gain you any money, it's not that much of a disadvantage that
Right.
their prices.
I was just saying, I was just wondering whether they'd be like, well, we can go on the market another 2
Yeah.
months, 3 months, a year, we'll get,
But they can, and
Yeah.
oftentimes that's what happens if you can't
yeah, okay.
come up to the.
So ask him for his comps and then have, and/or both have ours ready to go.
Yeah,
with our-
and so this is sort of how I've been
Yeah,
looking at it. Can you help me out here?
okay.
Just on the off chance that the realtor is a little bit dysfunctional
Yes.
and refuses to supply the comps,
Mhm.
what would you recommend the best strategy be?
Okay, so what does that tell you?
They haven't done their work.
Exactly. Most listing agents that know their property and have done their homework and want to get a deal done will be happy to provide them. If they're not providing them, it's probably because that's the seller's price and they're just trying to justify it. So in that case, if you have a seller and an agent that's just accommodating it, you probably aren't going to be able to make it happen. I mean, you can present your logic all you want, but unless it's sat on the market for a certain amount of time and they've seen 3 offers at exactly the same price, way lower than where they are, you're probably not going to win it first time around. You just have to sit and wait.
And would you go back and ask if he got any offers?
Yeah, I always ask
Yeah.
if there've been offers.
Before you put the offer in.
Yeah, you should
Yeah.
always have a conversation with the agent before you put an offer. Never sling an offer. And this amazes me that all of a sudden, you know, I'm coming home and there's an offer. I'm like, from who? For what? For where? Like,
Yeah.
to me, that makes absolutely no sense that you don't have a conversation with the listing
To get a
agent.
feel of
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, you are not helping yourself or your buyer if you don't do that. And then it's just, yeah, sometimes it's just a wait and see. And as long as you don't burn any bridges and you say, look, this is kind of the math that we've done. We're always here. If your seller wants to entertain it and we haven't bought anything else, please, you know, let us know and we'll readdress it. But sometimes, you know, you gotta be willing to walk away because it's just not gonna happen.
But that's a good advice, really.
Yeah.
To not completely close the door.
No, I
Just,
never burn bridges.
yeah.
Because not only for that house, but that agent with other houses, there may be 50,000 of us, but there aren't that many that trade all the time, so don't burn bridges.
Never. Just in real life too.
And that comes back, yeah, and that comes back to my you get more penny than you do with
Maybe
vinegar.
before the retirement.
Sorry?
I'm just kidding. Maybe before the retirement.
You honestly get so far with trust, you really do.
Yeah.
When an agent out there trusts you, it's amazing how
Yeah.
how much cooperation they'll give you, right?
Yeah.
How much they'll tell you, just like how many times have you,
it is to do the deal.
right? And then sometimes they'll just say, just bring me this. I'll make it. I'll try. I think it's this. Just bring me this.
Although nobody's supposed to do that.
No.
They don't know 100%. You never know what your
Yeah.
client's gonna really do,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
get a sense,
Yeah,
right? And when we know and trust each other, we talk to each other.
Yeah, we do.
and that's
Yeah.
the basis, foundation.
Yeah, and that's
Just you get a
partly
gut
why
sense,
that's
right?
partly why we get paid, is to know the market and to know how the game is played. That's how we can
We
advise.
save each other a lot of time, man, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the 3 P's of negotiation. Prepare, present, and position. Prepare is, all 3 of them are very important. But to me, if you miss on the prepare, you're probably not gonna have as high a close rate in making a deal as you would if you knew your stuff. Prepare is obviously know your goal, which is to get a contract. What else might be covered in preparing?
Is the buyer or is the seller?
Doesn't really matter.
Knowing the comps and having a plan B,
Yeah.
and that way you can turn to your client. It's the old takeaway. You know what? There are other properties on the street.
Mhm.
Thank you very much for your time.
And what you said there sort of touched on one of the big ones, which is know your client and set up clear expectations with your client. We tend to, I think, become a bit oblivious to how the game is played. And by not taking the time to set the expectations with our client of it can go this way or it can go that way, and thinking ahead, if it goes this way, how do you feel about that? If it goes that way, how do you feel about that? So setting the expectation from your client's perspective, makes a huge difference, I find. Because, you know, it was kind of, I would go back to my example with my buyer for the townhouse. I set the expectation that she's probably gonna be up at about 8:50, and then it could go this way, or it could go that way, they, you know, she could, and when you take the time to have that conversation with your client, it reduces their stress enormously. It's kind of, I sort of equate it, we don't tend to do it, I don't think, as much on the buy side as we do on the sell side. When we're going into a listing presentation, I never want to go in unless I know what the seller thinks their place is worth, because I'm going to get blown out of the water. And so it's the same thing when you're working with a buyer. You have to set the same expectations and really go through that process with them, or you're going to get blown out of the water. Now, and you will obviously, it's not fun, but you will come across buyers that are very tight-lipped, just like you'll come across sellers that are very tight-lipped and they don't want to share anything with you. And if you don't have that rapport, it's really hard for you to do your job. And that's when you have to make the decision, yes, I want to represent this person, or no, I don't, because they're going to shoot themselves in the foot. And me too, probably at the same time, so.
So actually, a friend who's an agent with a boutique building, like a boutique office, she had that with a almost $2 million deal. And the day of the contract, they were going back and forth, they had multiple, they had 2 offers. And then the seller decided to share that it actually had been a grow up in the basement. But they had had it all remediated, they have all the certificates.
Oh.
And nothing like that was shared beforehand. She said, needless to say, she lost those buyers that day. Yeah. And she's like, and she's still dealing with the sellers on other stuff, but she said it was a real, like, eye opener. She was like, you know, I'd asked them to share, and they decided to share the day that you're getting the offers.
It was sort of
What is that called, latent?
Almost like a,
Yeah, or late, yeah, that's kind of a big deal. It
She-
should have been shared right off the bat.
Yeah, that's what she
But
said. She
you
was
could
like, "You're
also-
like decided to tell me this now," and like she said, I was panicked. I've got 2 agents out there because again, it's your reputation, right? Like
It is, but you can also turn that and say, when she sat down and did the listing, how thorough was she in going through everything that we're supposed to
Yeah.
cover when we do the data information sheet? And
yeah,
even if you don't get a SPIS signed, like, you should go through
Know
all of
the
those
stuff,
points
yeah.
and make sure they're not, and I mean, we never, and I'm guilty of it too, I don't have conversations with my clients to make sure they're not upside down on their mortgage, like, because mortgaging hasn't been a thing for us. And now that, you know, with the legalization of marijuana, it's a bit of a different animal than it used to be, but it is about how you do your due diligence, and so
Yeah.
nobody likes to get caught off guard like that,
Yeah.
but it's not 100% the seller's fault.
no, yeah.
If she'd asked that question and they lied to her,
Mhm.
that's a different scenario.
Yeah.
Then as an agent, I'd be running for the hills, because God knows what else they're not.
Well, that's probably why she's still dealing with it, because it's sort of the both sides, right?
Yeah,
Isn't it a misrepresentation
totally.
at one of the highest levels?
Yeah.
Because that affects
Yeah.
respiratory issues,
Oh,
especially in
yeah.
children.
Well, they said it's been remediated, but it should have been,
It should be disclosed.
yeah,
Yeah.
disclosed right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sellers tend to underestimate not only the importance, but the positive effect of disclosure. When somebody walks in with that expectation already, and they've wrapped their head around it and they're moving forward, it oftentimes becomes kind of a non-issue. But when you drop a bomb on somebody, they don't trust anything at that point.
No, it's very different.
And I think sellers sometimes think, well, maybe they can get away with it and nobody will notice, and that'll be the easiest route to go, but it really isn't. If they just put it out there, then you know that the people that are there are okay with it, and the people that aren't wouldn't be if they found out later either, so.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said, at least they told you before the deal was done.
Yeah.
And that would have been even worse. But-
Yeah.
But I guess the agent felt, okay, now's the time. I have to tell them before anything gets signed, so this is my last chance.
Yeah, but it was a seller.
Oh, the seller,
Very
yeah.
strict, you know, it was, but yeah, maybe it was a bit of like, oh, never worry.
So it's always know your client, think ahead, and set the expectations. Those are the main parts of
So what was that?
It's know your client, think ahead, and set clear expectations. And then the other ones are be informed, obey the laws, and know your documents inside and out. That comes with time. Okay, so we're going to do an exercise.
Sorry, I had a question. I asked somebody else and they answered. Well, when you've got a document in play and you get that one that just wants to deal, they want to do the negotiations.
Oh, they want to do the back and forth, yeah.
Yeah, and it gets so messy. How do you, what is it that you use, Formwise or whatever, so that you can continue, but it's on a cleaner sheet? So it's, how do you do
A
that?
clean copy, you mean?
Without it being considered a new contract?
You're part of their team now, Emma?
You know what I mean? So if that front page is scratched out 15 times and you can't read it, we were talking about like.
Usually, the way I've ever done it is, I've never changed it mid-negotiation.
Right.
But after it's signed and accepted,
Then you just do it.
then you agree that we're gonna have a clean copy.
Okay.
And then you'll just get everyone to acknowledge it, because it's already been agreed on. But I wouldn't
Do
change
anything.
that mid-negotiation.
Okay,
You
that's
can
what I
write it in the corner and keep going.
Okay.
Little arrows and,
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things that I've learned is have both the client, or at least both parties initial every single page of the original document. You have to hold on to the original document.
Yeah.
And drop a clean copy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's what it was.
yeah, you submit.
So on the
Yeah.
clear, on the new clean copy, what do you say, like,
See original?
It's the original, yes.
oh, see original?
What
But
I'll-
does anything?
what I'll
anything else
usually-
said on it? Like,
Yeah, no, so what I'll
You
do
can
is I'll just, like, if it's the first page with the price, I'll just usually get the buyer, because they have the master, just to put in the final price and deposit and closing date, and then I'll staple it with the messy one behind,
Oh.
and just write at the top, clean copy,
Oh, clean copy.
yeah. But you're right, you can't get rid of the old.
No,
So
what
that
was
would
that?
sign the original back and forth
Yeah.
document
Yeah.
plus the clean
Yeah.
copy.
Yeah, you
And
just staple that
initial.
to the front, yeah, and have them initial it.
You have to keep it because it's a legal and binding document,
Yeah.
civil contract.
The DocuSign, it's not quite as messy as it is when we're handwriting.
Donna had one that went backwards 17
Oh my
times.
gosh.
You could
I didn't know which
you
one.
didn't even know where to start to look at it, and you showed it to us.
Was it the one on the right or the one on the
And it
left?
was exactly like you said, the guy just wanted the thrill of the negotiation versus anything else, so.
Eventually,
That's-
you're
it
gonna end
just-
up in the midpoint.
Yeah, that's when I was like, I'm as an agent looking at it, I can't understand it, so how is, that's what I wondered. Okay.
What you can do, just because I'm sort of a visual person, I might take a red pen and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, that's what I
Oh, that's a
and so
good
that
thing.
you can
Yeah.
follow the,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, that's really good too.
I can color code myself.
Well, like, it might be harder to do if
Did
you're
one
on
gold nugget?
DocuSign though, I'm not sure.
You can't, no, DocuSign you can't, so.
Separately
You could
use-
put a number in front of it.
So I've heard DocuSign and I've used it before, but do most agents use that or do they use AuthentiSign? Does anyone use?
InstaSign and there's another one. and
I don't
it's
know.
AuthentiSign and InstaSign are the same thing, and I'm actually now looking to switch from DocuSign to AuthentiSign because the new web forms has AuthentiSign built into it. You don't have to download your document.
Yeah.
into
Oh, I see.
DocuSign.
And you don't pay for it.
And you don't pay for it.
Oh.
Or you do, it's like 69 versus 300 a year or something.
Really?
Now, Treb has a free version,
Yeah,
but my understanding is it doesn't have the same functionality as the version that web forms has embedded. I don't know what the
Okay.
differences are.
and is there, because there was another one, Dotloop?
Dotloop was a KW product. It was from an outside company,
Yeah.
but Dotloop was designed just to have everybody that's part of the transaction be able to access it. I don't think it was a signing software.
Or
like
maybe it
DocuSign.
attached to InstaSign, because I remember Julie Hughes was saying that she used it or something, because it was.
It's
like
more of
a-
a repository
Okay.
for the documents so that everybody, like lawyers and mortgage brokers and everybody could access it.
So it just, so the web forms, we
Yeah.
can get that has built in the Authentisign?
Yeah, there's the old web forms and the new web forms. The new web forms that just came out a week or two ago
Okay.
has Authentisign embedded in it. It was like built around Authentisign. And if you're using DocuSign, you can still use the new web forms.
I haven't used anything,
Yes.
so that's good.
I would just learn Authentisign. I'm
Looking
just,
at the bright
So-
side.
So would this, like, I guess these new forms already, whatever's on there would already be updated and have all this built in? Like, we're not gonna worry about which ones they are. If we go on the web forms, this is already updated.
yeah, so if you go on, I haven't even been to the new web forms because stuff that I started in the old, I'm not gonna redo in the new. And I'll be honest, I have my assistant learning Authentisign right now so she can teach me. But
It is not intuitive.
Oh,
yeah, she said she liked it actually better than DocuSign.
Oh, Lord.
What,
I'm
InstaSign?
having a lot of trouble
Are
with
you?
it, and I had no trouble with
DocuSign?
DocuSign. But with Authentisign, I'm like, what?
I just found.
I had somebody say to me that, and I think they were using the Treb version though, not the Kriya version, that they would go in, they would type stuff in, because the difference between Authentisign and DocuSign, from what I've heard, is that you can type right into, you can make changes
Yes.
easier.
I think that's what.
But she had stuff that she had put in there and saved, and then when she went to go and send it, it was gone. Like there'd be brokerage missing or chunks missing.
So I found that if you don't make the document in Authentisign, it's like, so I go straight to web forms,
Yeah,
and then it was like, okay, now what? And it's just, DocuSign and web forms seem to get along better, but anyway.
well, because they're separate systems, you're taking it from one
I guess
and
we just have
putting
to
it into
figure it
the
out,
other.
because
So,
it makes
yeah, you're
sense
gonna
to
have
use something
play
that's
with
free.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind,
it. You just have to
yeah,
probe
when
it.
someone figures it out here, let us know.
Yeah, the brokerage will probably do, because it's new software, we're all still learning it.
Because you have a lot of experience.
Okay, we're gonna do a little exercise, a scenario. And the scenario is, you're representing a single buyer. Your client is renting her present property, and like any first-time buyer, she's looking to you to guide her through the process. The asking price for the home she really loves is $175,000, obviously not in this country. And the house appears to have evidence of a roof leak and is listed as is, and is correctly priced. Your client would like to keep her payments as low as possible since she has a number of student loans to pay off. She wants to write an offer for $155,000. There has been quite a bit of activity on the listing. What questions would you ask your client before you write up that offer?
Could you say the last sentence again? There was a lot of distraction out there.
Okay, here, I'll read it again. You're representing a single buyer. Your client is renting her present property, and like any first-time buyer, she's looking to you to guide her through the process. The asking price for the home she really loves is $175,000. But the house appears to have evidence of a roof leak and is listed as is, but it's correctly priced. Your client would like to keep her payments as low as possible since she still has a number of student loans to pay off. She wants to write an offer for $155,000, and there's been quite a bit of activity on the listing.
I want to answer.
Am I asking the
she's-
buyer or?
So
am I
you're sitting with your buyer, what are the questions that you would want to ask to prepare to negotiate this?
What is she pre-approved for?
Yeah.
Hey, Lizette.
Oh.
We're teaching Ignite today. Hey, right?
Okay, yeah, what is she approved for?
How has she come up with her current 155? What's behind those numbers?
How is she gonna be able to, will she be able to acquire a, loan plus improvements? Yes.
Yeah, well, and that's actually one of the questions they have here is what is the possibility of her paying the repair if you state your asking price of $155,000? So whether it's through a mortgage and repairs, like if the house is as is and there is a problem and you paid $155,000, do you have the ability to fix the roof or can you just buy yourself a big problem?
And what's your deposit?
What's her line in the sand? Like, what's her ceiling price? Like, how high would she go up with the consideration that she may have to get a loan? Like,
Yeah, so if she has to do the repairs and she has those student loans, you know, what if she doesn't get the 155 price?
And
So-
even the loans to repair.
And closing costs as well. A lot of people have no awareness that there's, you know,
Yeah.
especially here, land transfer tax times 2, you know, adjustments, et cetera.
Can't you get a consolidation loan?
For the, oh, you mean to roll the, yeah, that's an interesting thought. So what are the let's say she puts you're trying to set the expectations here. If you write that offer for 155, as is where is, and it's listed for 175 and there's activity, what are the possible outcomes that you might want to prepare her for?
She's not gonna get it.
Yeah.
Or if you get a sign back, what might it look like?
174.
Yeah, so what if the seller counters with a full offer to fix the roof or counters with no repair at all? Like you have to lay, and this comes down to setting expectations, like what are all the possible outcomes of your activity, and make sure that you discuss all of those with them. Now they also had a question here, what is it about this house that makes it your favorite? Comes back to motivation and emotion and what is it about this that she absolutely loves?
Did it say what kind of house?
Not Forest Hill.
You're not for 150.
Okay, so that's that exercise. Okay, now we're going to talk about presenting offers. What might be some of the important things to consider when you're presenting offers? We've covered a couple of them. Bottom of this page, so it's on paper. Okay, I mentioned it earlier. What's the number one thing that you should probably do
Listen.
when you're about to grab an offer?
All the other.
Call the other sales
The other
representative. Yeah. Because that will basically set the tone for what's about to unfold. And when you're on the phone, how do you get a sense, like what do you have to keep your eyes open for in terms of trying to understand how this is going to unfold?
How open they are.
Well, I would ask, how is this evening going to go? How is the offer presentation going to go?
You can be that direct, but I'm sitting here now. If I was across from the table from you, what are you reading right now into me?
Body language?
Exactly.
Oh, I thought this was a call on the phone.
It is. So what's the equivalent to body language?
Tonality.
Yeah, it's the non-verbal cues that you're gonna get. It's not actually the words they're gonna say, it's gonna be how they're going to say it. If you get someone on the other line that says, oh, great, that would be wonderful, looking forward to see what you have, da-da-da-da-da, versus, yeah? Okay, well, yeah, whatever. Just send it in. I don't know where my vendor is. Like, those non-verbal cues, it's not only what they're saying, it's how they're saying it that's gonna set the tone of what that negotiation's gonna be like.
That would draw into question if the individual says, I don't know where my vendor is, irrevocable.
Yeah, yeah. It will cue you to ask other questions that you're gonna need to make the offer as palatable, to give away the freebies at least, and make the offer as palatable as possible. What's the other thing you might want to do after you get off the phone with that and you're going back to your buyer to, finalize the price and stuff?
To find out how many offers we have.
Yeah, you've had that conversation.
Oh,
But
that's already on.
it comes back to setting expectations with your buyers is all the other different ways that this can go. So I might come back and you're not gonna say disparaging things about any other agent, but you might say, the sense I'm getting is that they're not gonna be the easiest people to negotiate with. Like you might just want to put it out there so that if it blows up, because you've just got this sense from the conversation that they're not totally surprised. Because it's your fiduciary duty to represent that buyer as best you can, and that's telling them any information that you've gleaned.
Right.
This one comes back to your listening skills, which is basically keep quiet once you present your offer. Like just really start to absorb what's being said and what you're hearing. These two are kind of related. Well, the keep quiet once you present your offer and listen carefully to what is important to the other party. Like, once you've put something out there, the two most important things to negotiate are A, listen, and B, ask a ton of questions. And then make sure that you're guiding those questions to give you the motivation that you need. Like you have to find that common ground, and the only way you're going to do that is by listening. These two are kind of related too. So to give your offer the best chance, be confident and committed to your offer as you present it. Avoid indicating to the other side if you believe it is less than a great offer. So if you can't get your buyer where you want your buyer to be and you know you're off the mark, still present it in a positive light and just make sure you leave the door open to...
How many times in that case have you emailed it in versus still gone in person?
I will still get in my car and try to present in person as often as I can. With DocuSign, it tends to happen less and less, and most agents, including me, will try and keep your seller away from the other agent. But usually if I have to do it over the phone and I'm emailing it in, I will talk to the agent before I do the offer. I will email it in, I will talk to the agent after I've sent it to discuss what's in it and how they think their client might react to it. I try to get as much FaceTime in there as I can.
Right. So you said because of DocuSign, less like...
Well, maybe it's because I've been in the business too long, but when I started, it used to be like a drug deal in front of a house, and everybody was there with their clients, the cars were lined up down the street, and you were running back to getting a signature, and then running back in, and then representing your client, and then running back out to wherever they were sitting, and then running back in. Now with DocuSign, it's just like, I'm going to email it to them, I'll talk to them on the phone, and then, so it's become a lot more impersonal, and I don't know as agents that necessarily serves us well. I think it's convenient. But I think that a lot of deals can go sideways because you don't have the same level of communication that you would have had if you were reading body language and you were right in front of your clients. So as much as I like DocuSign, I will always still pick old school and try and be in front of...
I just wondered on the other side, to that point, with you saying that you try to keep your seller away, would there ever be a time where you would say, just email your offers in and I will discuss this and then we'll, you know what I mean? Like almost have the seller.
A lot of listings are like that now.
Okay, because I haven't seen that. I just, it's still been like me that's someone at the unit or whatever, so I was just curious.
Trish has a very interesting philosophy, and I'm kind of thinking of observing it, and that is if you can still have the offer presentation, but your client is in another room and you're sitting there interfacing with all of the agents, but your client is not.
Yeah.
So
It's all at the same time?
No, just
No.
one at a time,
Oh, one
they'll
at a
bring it
time,
in, but
so
they're
it's
presenting
the
it to you.
Yeah.
And then you'll bring your client in and go over it, but your client is not sitting there with you while all the agents are coming in.
Yeah, but then you see the seller doesn't get
The
attached to you agent, not you agent.
Yeah.
And doesn't sit there and go, oh, okay. Like
That was a good one.
poker face is not, as much as you try to prime them,
They're not having there yet.
yeah, keep them close by so that you can do it expeditiously, but but don't necessarily.
When you're doing the DocuSign,
Mhm.
so your clients are obviously they're at home or whatever and sending it to you. Are you still presenting the offer in person? with the
Sometimes you
DocuSign?
can, sometimes you can't. It depends.
I don't know
That's
how it
going to be
presents.
dictated by the listing agent.
Okay.
If I can get in front of the seller, I will do my darndest. But most of the time.
It's not happening very
It's
often
not happening
now.
very
Really?
often. So
So nowadays we
No, they
have
don't want
mix
Oh,
with emails and phone calls, yeah?
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the.
Yeah.
that's so important.
Yeah.
You don't need a
It
lot of
is.
sellers anymore.
No,
That's
no.
dumb
I'm
version.
just wondering, yeah, because with that, that's why I was asking, right? I mean, there's that case of, you used to, well, I mean, email it in because you knew as the agent, it's like,
It
I
wasn't
don't have
gonna
a
fly.
shot,
Yeah, it's multiple
you know?
offers and I'm so far out of the realm,
exactly.
I'm not
But then
gonna-
yet on the other side, do you still have, you know, if you did take that, maybe that is that, you know, it just makes that much of a difference.
Sorry, I lost you on that one.
The fact that you're there in person, like you're not sort of.
That
phoning
makes,
it
I
in,
think that
right?
makes, I mean, I have actually sat at the table with my clients
Yeah.
and had them pick a buyer because their agent represented them so well. Said they really love it, da-da-da-da, and they had rapport, and they did all that kind of stuff, and they'll take slightly less
Yeah, that's what
than, and slightly, not huge amounts, but it can make a difference, but we don't
Especially
get
if they
that.
like their neighbors, right? They
Yeah.
like their neighbors and they
Yeah.
want to put somebody in the
Yeah,
house that's
house
gonna
that-
suit
that
the
they're
neighbors.
gonna
It's
like.
amazing
Yeah.
what people will do.
Yeah, because this is a home, it's not a commercial transaction, and there's a lot of emotion in it, but it is getting harder and harder to
Yeah.
get past the listing
To
agent.
reach the people.
Yeah.
And I have a question, so when you have a listing
Mhm.
on offer night or
Mhm.
whatever the time is, you prefer the old, I mean, that they come, that the agents come in.
I do it more for
Seller?
time effectiveness,
Mhm.
because when you're doing DocuSign, if everybody emails it in, and then you have to call them all, and then find out if there's any flexibility, and then you have to email it all back to them, and then they have to email it back to their client, and then they have to, and then it has to come back to you again. The turnaround time for sending people back is way longer.
And you can't read, to your point.
And you can't,
Whether or
yeah.
not they're going to know that
Yeah.
their seller can actually come up or not.
So you can shorten the time span if you say, okay, we're having offers at my office, my seller is close by, you're all gonna come in and present your offers, and if your clients are close by, great, or if you're gonna DocuSign it back to them, great. But I can say to all of you at the same time, we're sending it back, and I don't have to make 15 phone calls, it just shortens one part of the process, and I can read them better.
But your seller would not be with you?
Hmm?
Would be, the seller would not be with you or would be close by or?
Yeah, I may have them in my office and I'm gonna do, sometimes sellers want to be present, not often, but I sort of say, why would you want to do that? Because I'll go through it with you once we have all the offers. But then all the other agents are just sitting there and you go through it with your seller like you would anyway. And I find that if your seller's not in the room and they're presenting the offer, they're gonna go faster. Because they're not trying to.
Just to be clear, you've done, representing the seller, you've done offer presentation without being with the seller?
The seller's in the office, the seller's just not in the room.
See, I've never, ever done, like, represented the seller where I didn't do, like, right beside them, where I was.
And because Trish had said this at one of our office meetings, and I was thinking about it, I thought how odd it was, but I think she's right. You're trying to train your seller to have a poker face, because they're not really there for any reason.
And they really just want to see
And all they
it
can do
right.
is really blow it.
Oh, so what you do,
So-
so what you would do is
So I might have offer
have them over there in a closing room and you're meeting with the agents like
Yeah,
this. Yeah,
yeah.
that's smart.
And then
Yeah.
present them all at once.
Yeah, so you can get, because the agents will go faster,
Yeah.
and then you can get a read whether
then you
there's
go
any
back, yeah, and then you go
flexibility.
back.
And
Yeah,
then
I've
you
done
say,
that, yeah.
and then just say, okay, leave it with me, we're gonna go through everything, and then
Be
I'll
right
go
back.
back, be right back.
Yeah.
And the buyer agent doesn't have to impress the sellers.
And what's gonna happen anyways, half of them are gonna email it and not show up anyway for an offer presentation these days, so.
Do they drop down to the list? I mean,
But you
still
can
look at
send the
them,
picture.
Obviously you have to, but
What do you mean,
do you
Cutie?
think sometimes maybe then the person, the buyer didn't get that house because
Yeah.
they didn't show up?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a really good offer, usually an agent will make the effort to show up because they know they probably have a pretty good chance.
Showing up is half the battle, right?
Sometimes, yeah. Because sometimes, you know, you'll also pick an offer if they're really close, if somebody can turn around and you can firm it up easier. So, yeah, they're just, I find it is changing out there in terms of the way we do business because of technology. And I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm just old school, but I just think it's easier to read people when you can see them and work with them. Okay, so about presenting offers, call the sales representative, pay attention to nonverbal cues, keep quiet once you present the offer, listen carefully to what's important to the other party, especially when they're giving you a sign back. Stay calm and relaxed.
Oh, that's
Challenging.
Yes. Yeah. Either party may have a strong emotional reaction to the price or other terms of the offer. Be a calming influence until they're able to see the situation rationally again. Remember, you're there as a representative for your client. Keep your emotions out of it. Focus on your customer's needs, so isolate the objections of both sides and offer solutions that'll satisfy the other party while still meeting your client's core needs. And give your offer the best chance by being confident and committed to your offer as you present it. They did a little exercise here about nonverbal cues. They sort of set it up this way. So you have positive and negative. And you can have in a face-to-face meeting or on the phone. So what they're looking for here is what you might be looking for. If you were face-to-face with someone, what might be some of the positive things that you would look for versus things that might be perceived as kind of negative in terms, when you're face-to-face, there's body language, so.
Closed off body language.
What does that mean?
Like arms crossed.
Crossed arms, yeah.
No smile.
They may be cold.
Yeah, no smiles.
sort of turn away with their body.
Yeah, turned away.
No eye contact.
Exactly. Eye contact is a good word. Eye contact's an interesting one though, because well, most agents that are in this industry don't fall under that, but if you're dealing with a client and they're on the autism spectrum, you have to be wary that eye contact, which is something that we classify as a positive thing, or no eye contact as a negative thing, is not always, because sometimes it's just not in their nature to do that. Okay,
Also,
so what are some of the positive ones?
Smiling.
Smiling, yeah. Yeah, well, the opposite of these ones. Okay, we'll add ones that aren't on the opposite of that.
Alcohol.
Nodding.
Nodding.
Open posture.
Open palms are the exact opposite to crossed arms. Okay, so if all of a sudden you're on the phone and you can't see that, what are some of the positive nonverbal cues?
Affirmations. Like yeses.
Yeah, yeses.
If they sort of reply, I think, fairly quickly without hesitation.
Well, somebody can react quickly.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Tonality.
It's the tonality. So
Yeah.
are they upbeat? Are they empathetic? Do you have varied tones? And basically sort of a swift pace of speech. And so the opposite to that would be?
What does it say?
Abrupt.
What kind of tones?
Varied.
Oh,
Sorry, that's
varied.
E. There we go. And so the opposite of that would be monotone.
Abrupt.
Abrupt is a good word, yeah. And they said sort of slow speech. Like lack of enthusiasm. You just kind of get that sense. How are we doing for time? Okay, we've got that. So they talk about some tactics, which, yeah, I agree with them, but yeah, they're tactics. I don't know that I'd call them what they called them, but so here, I'm going to read you the tactic, and I'm going to explain what the action is, and I want you to give me a counter tactic to it. Okay, so the tactic is called nibbling, and it's once your client has agreed upon a major concession, the other party will start nibbling for additional smaller concessions. So it's kind of like, once you've given a point, it's like you've shown your weakness, and now they're going to see what else they can get from you. So how might you counter that?
Like, as
Sorry, who's now?
So
the person that put it out.
So the buyer?
okay,
Starting to
so
nibble?
let's say something was listed for 800,000, and you come in, you don't know this, but the seller is extremely motivated to sell. So it's listed at 800. You get an offer for 700, and you sign it back at like 835, 735. Okay, so you've gone like more than halfway because you really don't want these people to go. You're not quite there. And all of a sudden they see 735 and they go, well, that was a lot more than I expected. They must be really motivated. So yeah, 735 we could probably do, but can we have the fence fixed, and we really like the Mixmaster in the kitchen, and we would also like the curtains in the master bedroom, and you're just like, oh, for God's sakes.
I feel like that.
So how do you counter that?
From a buyer's perspective,
No, so what's the counter to that nibbling tactic, where all of a sudden they come at you with a whole bunch of other stuff because they think you're weak or
Is that the only offer?
that's the one you're working with right now.
Okay. So basically, how am I talking to my buyer clients?
No.
No,
No,
still
no,
not.
no,
So-
you
the
need-
mix match,
Okay,
I would
so-
go, I can give that to you, but we'll, for $1,000. So I would come back at
Okay,
like
so what they're suggesting you do is that you nibble back. So you ask for a concession in return before you agree to any further concessions. So if they say, well, I wanted the
Quicker
Mixmaster and the kitchen and the bedroom sheets and this fix, you might go, you know, we've already come down to 835. Do you think you can move your closing up by 2 weeks because of the carrying costs? And then you don't deal with their stuff. And then they go, oh, well, do you think you can? Like you don't give an answer to any of their nibbles until they've given something. So you would, in effect, stop them in their track.
okay.
So you ask for something back.
Back before you give any further concessions.
So you don't say yes,
You don't say yes, you don't say no,
You
you
just-
just throw another
Question to a question.
yeah,
Okay,
concession back
all
to it.
right.
Hot potato is the next one. So the other party tries to pass a problem on to you. For example, the co-op sales representative, because this doesn't really work for us, but the co-op sales representative tries to pass all of the closing costs on to your client because their client can't afford them. So it's a hot potato. You're basically launching something back at them because you're, well, this one isn't really a good one either. With a hot potato, they're trying to get you to do something that you're not necessarily bound to do. They're just trying to see if they can get away with it. That's,
Throw it up in the air and hope that you're gonna catch it.
yeah. So what might you do with that?
Same thing, I might nibble that.
You just throw it back.
Yeah.
So in that example, you might throw it back, but you have to test it. When you're throwing it back, you're testing it for validity. So you really want to find out if it's a real problem. Like, can they really not afford the closing costs? Like, this deal's not going to happen if you don't take it because they're so tight in their financing.
That might be a bigger thing from the closing too, right?
Yeah, so when it's hot potato and they're trying to throw something your way that they want you to absorb, check the validity of it. Like, throw it back to them and try and see
So
if
in that
it
case,
really
what
is.
kind of, what would you, how would you do that? Like, what would you say?
So, what I might say is, wow, that's, you know, a bit of a concern if their financing is that tight that they can't afford, you know, $2,000 in closing costs. Usually, you know, we might split that. That's making me really, really nervous. Are your people able to close? Well, yeah, I mean, it's not that bad. Okay, well then why don't we just split them?
Right.
And if they say, yeah, it really is that close, then you're like, okay, well, we need to deal with this then, because that's gonna open up a whole host of other problems, but.
And that's why it's good to know the seller's listing agent, because once you establish trust, then when the listing agent says it, then it's really tight. Or the other way around,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah,
Then
you have to decide whether it's valid or not.
You sort
Yeah.
of, is it just bluffing or?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, sorry, you had it.
Yeah, I experienced a catastrophe along those lines, even though I thought I knew my clients exceptionally well, including their finances, but they were very hush-hush about it. When it came to the closing costs, and I explained it to them, and even wrote it out for them, they had to extend their deal because they needed an extra $25,000, so we acquired a line of credit, unsecured line of credit, an extra $25,000 for their closing costs. But it would have been much easier on me if they had disclosed that information to me.
Yeah.
Because even though you may know your buyer well, they do not disclose everything.
I think not only are some people tight-lipped and they don't disclose it, but honestly, I think sometimes they just don't get it. Like, they glaze over when you go over all these numbers and they can't really quite figure out how to make that work with their finances, because everybody deals with their finances differently, and it's not every day that you buy a house. And I just find sometimes they'll glaze over, even when I've written it down, I'm like, so if this happens, how would you deal with that?
Isn't that then part of like the 3 Ps, like the position, the preparing? Because as a seller's agent, if you're coming to the table with like either financing club or no, you know, that side of things, you kind of want to make sure, like, and ask the questions. Or, you know, there's
You know,
that
does your
form,
buyer
there's
have
that
the
form
fin-
now
yeah.
that, yeah, because I know with that one house that I sold, everything was fine. And it was like my first sale, I was like, oh, every other day I was checking and making sure the clothes, everything was fine. No problem, no problem. And then literally like less than a week before closing, we found out that they couldn't close on the closing date. And it was because the money was coming from a house that was sold, but it wasn't in her name, and then it had to go to the bank, and then the bank had to turn the money out, and so, like, we had to move the closing out by like a week. And that was, you know, and you're thinking, well, like, they're like, what, how else would I have done that? So I guess-
Sometimes shit happens. Like, you can't always, but I think this became, the know your client became sort of more top of mind to me when I did my luxury designation, because they talked about if you've got a $15 million listing, how do you pre-qualify those buyers? And how do you know that they can actually really afford that? When you get up into those price points, you're like, have you been pre-qualified and been to the bank? Like, you
How
sort
do
of
you say
assume if
that?
somebody's trading in the $15 million range that they've been relatively successful and they manage their money well. And it's a lot harder. I mean, they have registries in the States where you can,
Net worth registries.
yeah, where you can check out people. I don't think we have them up here
So
though.
how do you
Not that I'm
do it here?
aware of.
It's a lot trickier. You really have to drill that other agent to make sure that they know their buyer.
Yeah, I've been, like, when showing a $15 million house, I have been really grilled by the listing agent. How qualified is your seller?
Yeah.
What's their name? what's their,
Yeah.
you know, they want to know that, don't
Where do
waste
they
my
own?
time. I
Yeah,
don't want
where
somebody
do
who
they
just
own?
wants to
Where
come
do
and check out the house,
House,
right?
Yeah, yeah.
I would do the same thing, actually.
Yeah, I would too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's the hot potato one, and then there's the good cop, bad cop, which is, does anybody know?
Well, I'm usually the buyer at home, but I don't know what.
Yeah, so they can be within your own clients. You know, you've got one husband saying that's way too expensive, you know, we're not gonna go that high, and you have the wife, but I really want it, I really want it, you can just buy it, and you're just like, okay, how might you deal with that?
The wife's usually emotional and then the husband's usually objective.
How would you deal with it? Come back to the basics of what their motivation is.
Yeah. Or you can basically call them out on it when you can really see someone doing good cop, bad cop, like car salesman is what you normally think of, I'll go talk to my manager.
No.
You call them out on it and say, you know, are you playing good cop, bad cop with me? Because that's not really gonna work here. You can either do it that way, or you can say, okay, well, when you two decide what your joint position is, then we can move forward, because otherwise,
Like,
this isn't gonna serve a
at the
purpose.
beginning, when you do your assessment with them though, you ask, presumably you've asked questions, like to find out if it's a need or a want.
Mhm.
And then you can go back to those things. Remember when we met and you,
Exactly,
you know,
yeah.
But if they're playing good cop, bad cop, then.
If they're doing it on purpose, then you have to call
like
it, you have to call them on
Yeah,
it, yeah.
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 And like you said, it's their,
tell them to go back to
you're
that
just the
list.
advisor,
Yeah.
consultant, so let me know when you guys would come to a,
Yeah, and we're
because
gonna
I don't
stop
need to be
this.
part of it, yeah.
Okay, then, okay, so positioning is moving both parties closer to each other until you have a full agreement. It's that sort of niggling back and forth. So, how might you do that?
Sorry, what was the question again?
So positioning is when you're trying to move, taking little baby steps to move the parties closer together until you have a full agreement. So what are the important things to consider when you're trying to do that?
How many other offers are
Even if there's just one offer,
Maybe the things that all parties agree.
that's it. So acknowledge and affirm the common ground. So say, you know, we've gone this far, we're like really close, you're getting that, we're getting that. We just have this little area to gap the bridge the gap. And then you can just sort of focus in a positive way on that. And you can do that by asking what and how questions. So, you know, we're like $3,000 apart. You know, what is it that will make a difference for your client to get them to where we need to be? Or how can we do this? Or it's the what and the how questions that move. So the example they have here is Mr. and Mrs. Seller You're requesting a 30-day close. What is it that's important to you about that 30 days? Like, I can't afford to carry my house for more than 2 months. Like, once you understand that, then it's easier to move towards more common ground. And you have to realize that it's a process, and as long as you're moving in a positive direction, no matter how slowly you're getting there, your one goal is to get that deal done. So, patience and calmness. However, there does get to a point where deals can fall apart for $3,000 and just nobody's gonna move anymore.
But I think, it's just because I was listening to a podcast and it said something about the result and then the process. And it said, you want the result is whatever it is, right? The contract is still at the end of the day. And in order to get there, there's a process, and you need to start to learn to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Because if you're enjoying it in the process and not so worried about what's happening here, then you won't be attached.
To the outcome.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
And then there does, and this comes back to ego, and even though your goal is to get that deal done, is sometimes you just have to know when to walk away. Like, you're not gonna get every deal, no matter how hard you try. But, if you're willing to do some things that other people might not, or be a little more flexible without giving away too much, then you're likely to make it happen. But sometimes you just have to say, yeah, this is just never gonna happen, and there are other properties, so.
That's no fun.
Good luck.
Yeah. But then again, don't burn any bridges. Should your seller or buyer reconsider their position, let me know. Okay, so we have some exercises. So I'm gonna split. Are you leaving?
That's okay, I can wait.
Do you want to take a washroom break, and then we'll do the scenarios, because that's all we've got left.
Okay, sorry.
Get a glass of water.
Shall I get you one?
Okay.
Bottle or glass or?
Yeah, bottle.
Do you know approximately time? No,
Well, we're
until
supposed
the
to
end.
end at 3:30, so I was gonna give like 10
Oh,
minutes
oh,
a
perfect.
scenario.
Okay.
The scenarios are just sort of
Okay,
fun sort of practice
Thank you.
things.
thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Sorry,
That's okay. You in the middle of something?
I entered into a lease deal with an agent whose client has never ever visited the property which they purchased.
A lease deal, but they purchase?
Sorry, they purchased the property, put it up for lease.
Oh,
The agent never saw the property, took everything from the original MLS.
so the agent for the buyer
Yes. Plus the client
never saw the property.
never saw the property.
The agent sold the client a property that they hadn't even previewed?
That's correct.
Oh, Jesus, you wonder why we get a bad reputation.
Oh my God.
Okay.
The property is originally a two-car garage. It's not. Somebody knocked it, a previous tenant had knocked out a wall and built it into the garage.
That's not even what it said it is.
Oh, this is a case for RICO
Oh,
and
no.
misrepresentation and
And
the carpets needed to be cleaned, the place needed to be
are
painted.
you still in that?
Oh, yeah.
So you're involved in it how?
I'm the original, I acted for the client to lease the property. He's come in from Montreal to Markham. I acted on the property. We couldn't get into the garage because the garage was locked. And nobody had a key except the previous tenant who left. The windows to the garage are blacked out, so there was no way to see. And I made a whole host of inclusions. And
None of it's there.
none of it was done. And I told the agent, look, just sell us the property. I want client to buy it. Right now, they want to buy it.
Yeah. They were originally gonna lease it, but now they'll just buy it.
Now I'm telling their agent, as opposed to going to RICO, and I've got a text, you just scan on the text message, just keep going down and down and down, of all the problems that seem to come up. There was a flood in the basement, there was a backup in the sewage system.
From the time you saw it to the time?
No, from the time that they've moved in. The eaves troughs are filled with seeds, hence you have, it's,
Gee, and I thought my son was having a bad day.
it's a
That's a-
realtor's nightmare, but
Please.
it proves to my client how valuable. And he looked at me and said, for $900, Mike, this was a deal for you. And I said, yeah, now you're understanding my net worth.
Yeah,
Because who else would do this for you?
yeah, yeah.
Anybody else would say, you're done.
Well, my son, who's a brand new agent, just rented a property to some clients and they moved in, and when they saw the property, there was like a little 1-by-1 sort of bookcase or a little table thing against the wall, and now that the people that were there before are out and the new tenants are moving in, there's a massive mold spot.
You have to move.
Like massive mold. Now, it's a condo, so it's actually the
Mold, you
condo
said?
mold.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's a condo, so the condo property manager was in there and said, wow, I've never seen anything like that in this building. So my son's like, okay, well now what do we do? Because our clients are in there, and I said, well,
That's a leading defect.
let's find out what the property manager is going to do about the property. Like, what's the remediation? A, is it a health risk right now and they have to get out right away? Or is it not that deadly an issue? They can, cut out the drywall, remediate it, and your guys can stay in there. Because if your guys have to go and stay at a hotel while this is done, the landlord's we're gonna have to go after the landlord for that cost. Your clients shouldn't be out, plus they've already paid the rent, they can't stay there. So, that's my conversation after this session today.
There's also the non-disclosure of it,
Yeah,
even in a lease.
yeah. I'm not even sure that the landlord knew it was there,
Probably.
because the tenants would have been in there, the tenants had it in front. It's been a leased property already.
I found that I've had to move furniture, bring a flashlight, go to the basement, look up everything,
Yeah.
everything. And I'm finding this because when I'm dealing with, and I hate to be, sound racist,
Yeah,
there are certain things that
certain cultures don't
certain
deem
cultures
to-
don't
yeah, deem to disclose
recognize
the way we
as
do.
health
Yeah.
problems because they've come from foreign countries. And I saw this morning on a rental, and this is funny, this tells me that person never took the exam. When it said rent, it said $125 per month. Meaning the cooperating brokerage gets $125 per month of the first year, as opposed to saying half month's rent.
Are they not just trying to split up the half a month's rent so that the landlord doesn't have to lose one beginning month? Like, do they literally mean?
I called them on this and I said, do you mean that you want me to do this lease for $125? Oh no, it's actually for $1,500. Then why not put in the MLS?
But are they planning on paying you $125 for the next?
No, it was $125 times 12. They just,
Oh my God.
But is that, like, yeah,
Is
but is
that how they're
that
paying you, though?
one a month?
Because
They
they
can
make
do
you
that.
12 payments?
Will you get post-dated checks?
Maybe you.
Yeah, or are they gonna pay for you?
You better check that.
You better check that, because they might be paying you $1,500, but only $125 a month. Whenever your rent check comes
For
in,
12
they'll give you a
months.
little bit.
they can do that?
They can do
That's what they've
anything.
written.
I understand some of this. And I looked at it and Chinese.
Try that one.
Now, what's done now with virtual offices? If a company has set up,
EXP is
where
I was
do you
gonna say,
put the trust account check?
That's bad.
Yeah,
or don't know.
Or if you're really uncomfortable with it, just write that the check will be held by your brokerage instead of theirs.
That's fine. All right.
And-
Is this still the lease one you're talking?
No.
Okay, so let's do these last two exercises. Okay, I'm gonna say, we're gonna switch, but for this one, you three are going to be the listing agent and you two are going to be the,
Buyers.
oh, actually, it probably makes more sense. Why don't you three back there be the listing agent and you two up here will be the buyer?
Okay.
Buyer's agent. Okay, so
Buyer's
here's a
agent.
scenario. You two are the buyer's agent and you three are the listing
Yeah.
agent.
That's good.
And then you
Got
can
all the
present
three
your
movies out
positions together. So, here's the scenario. The property has 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, and is listed for $350,000 in a well-established neighborhood. The house requires new carpeting throughout the first floor and a new garage door opener. 3 offers have been made, but all were below the asking price. So, for the buyer sales representative role, your buyers are making an offer for $340,000 for the house. It's listed for $350,000. They've been pre-approved. The buyers would like to close in the shortest time possible since they're moving from out of state and need a home for their family. Since they are leaving their appliances in the current home, the buyers would also like it if all the appliances could be included. Okay, that's your scenario. Listing agent. Your sellers have raised their family in this house that you're selling and have many friends and family in the area. Since their children are now grown, they no longer need the amount of space that their current home provides and have purchased a home in Florida. They would like to give all the appliances to their daughter, who has just gone through a divorce. They will not be moving until they have sold their current house, and although they would like to get to Florida as soon as possible, they are ready to stand their ground regarding the price. Okay, so I'm going to give you each, what time is it now? I'm going to give you each 3 minutes to come up with how you're going to approach this and what you're going to ask for. And then you're going to pick someone to represent you, and we're going to let you guys negotiate the deal.
And what was that with the carpets or all?
Carpets and.
So, here, I'm gonna make it up here so you can read the scenarios.
What is it here?
Yeah, it'll be on page 21 on.
Where'd you go?
That's it. It's,
Okay.
Your client has, no, it's the one before that. There you go. This is it.
Okay.
Your buyers are offering
Where'd you go?
$340,000.
My buyers or my buying? I'll leave. Mike, take
Well,
the
could you
off.
get more practice then? Where is it? I'll put it up here. We're probably just gonna end up doing one of those
Okay,
scenarios.
Okay, so,
I would like to know that.
okay, so basically they want to give their daughter
Yeah,
all the appliances, and they want to
Yes.
stand their ground.
and I would
And they're
like,
not in a hurry,
yeah,
so what do you want us to do?
Okay, so here is, hold on, there we go.
Buyer's perspective, right?
That's huge.
so the buyer wants appliances as
They want
well.
appliances.
So this is not a big deal, I think that the negotiation about the costs of appliances could solve that
Yeah.
issue
Yeah,
very easily.
yeah,
And the second problem is the closing date. So I will ask
Can you read that? I can't make that.
buyer what is flexibility
Mhm.
with this,
Okay.
and I will talk
We're
with the seller.
flexible. We're
We are
flexible.
flexible.
Are they flexible?
I think they are in a hurry, or
Oh.
one side
I know we're
insists
not in a hurry.
on this, but I don't think that both problems are a real issue
yeah,
for
right.
for the solution and for the closing, for the deal.
Why on earth would I ever give appliances to my daughter?
So she'll hold it.
Like they're,
I'm gonna make this big.
sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Patricia. I'm sorry. to figure out who Denise is.
New garage door opener.
Mm-hmm. All 3 offers have been made. So I would know this as the buyer.
Yes,
They're not multiple, they're just 3 separate offers.
yeah. 3 offers have been made, but all were below asking,
Okay.
and they didn't take them.
Did it say how low they were?
No, they wouldn't disclose the price.
Oh.
Oh, they want to include the appliances, right?
It says they want to stand their ground regarding the price.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're really willing to negotiate unless,
Now, you're the
Because the
listing agent, they
clients-
turned down 3 offers at this point.
so they probably are willing to negotiate within the realm of the cost of the appliances.
Yeah.
Or
That
have,
will-
or give them the old ones, get them. Like, whatever. The daughter, does it, cause she went through a divorce.
Yes,
They
yes,
can
for
have
the
the
new
old ones.
beginning.
They can have old ones, the old ones, it's fine.
So, definitely. And regarding this, they can negotiate the price a little bit with counter offer or something.
Yeah, so they wanna do
I
340.
don't feel this as a
They have been.
huge problem.
They have been pre-approved, buyers would like to close in the shortest time possible since they are moving from out of state. And a home, they need a home with family. People are leaving their appliances, yeah, okay, so.
So we can make a counter offer with,
With the
or
appliances-
without
With the appliances.
with appliances or
And,
without.
you know, say like
Yeah.
340,
45 days, for instance, I don't know.
see 340 what, 343 the appliances or?
No, yeah, for instance,
Like, they need to come up a bit,
yeah,
maybe 2,000 or something,
maybe, I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, you guys ready?
Let's say,
You're not ready?
We need another minute.
Okay.
I wonder if they're gonna be
as cheap
hard
as.
asks.
Yes,
I don't know what this.
actually, it's our turn because we have already received an offer, yeah?
You had 3 offers
Okay,
that have not flown.
okay,
Okay. Okay, so who's gonna, okay.
Why don't you try? No,
I think you should try, Claudia.
You should try, yes. If you can't do it here, you can do it up there.
You can do it.
You can
Claudia.
do it. I'm right here behind, I'm gonna be sitting at the table with you.
Remember,
Exactly.
call.
Where do I
start?
Okay, so you're calling, who's gonna be the listing agent, who's gonna?
she,
I am?
Okay.
Oh.
All right. Okay, so
Okay,
you're
wait,
calling
wait.
the listing agent.
Yeah, I'm non-threatening her.
Okay, ring ring.
Hello.
Oh, hi, this is Claudia Gray from Keller Williams.
Oh, yeah, I remember you, I was.
Realty? Yes, yes. I actually have, the client of mine is, do I say that I
Oh,
already-
don't worry.
we have an offer
Yes.
from my client
Uh-huh.
and, I don't know, that's it? No.
So
So do I,
you-
it's like presenting the offer? Is that
Yeah,
what
so
I'm
you've
doing?
got the signed offer now,
Okay.
and,
So
well, okay,
we
no, let's,
pretend that
no,
I'm
let's,
presenting the offer.
let's not say you're presenting the offer. Let's say you're calling them because you have a buyer that wants to put an offer in. So you're just calling to let them know that you're putting together an offer.
Because you never say it over the phone, you can't say it, right? Is that right? You don't say it over the phone.
No, because if you don't have it in writing and your buyer changes their mind,
Yeah.
you're gonna look like,
Yeah, yeah. And that's.
Okay. So hi, blah, blah, blah. I have a client who is, who wants to put an offer in. I'm just writing up the offer. And I'm curious, have there been any other offers?
Well, I have had 3 offers in the past, but they were too low. I guess I can see that, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, my buyer didn't
Oh,
accept
wait, was
The
this
buyer
just?
didn't accept them.
Oh, okay. And was this just recently or?
And over the last couple of weeks.
All right.
Yeah.
So were they really lowballing offers?
Yeah, the client didn't accept them, so they weren't, they were lower than they wanted, than what they were looking for.
Oh,
Is that
see,
okay to
now I
say
don't know what
that?
else to ask.
Okay, so,
So will you be presenting an offer then? Do you know? Like, can you let me know?
so,
Now, are they very, no, I can't ask that.
Of
So-
course you
See,
can.
I just don't know what
Of
to
course you
ask.
can.
yeah, so, okay, so she's just said they've
Three
just,
offers?
yeah, they
That's
turned
it.
them down, or just say, wow, that, it's funny, I find the market tends to kind of send a message, you know, when I always sort of, my antennas go up when a seller has turned down 3 offers for price. Are they flexible in their negotiations?
It depends. Why don't you present your offer and we can talk.
Well, I don't want to waste everybody's time, so I'm trying to understand if there's no flexibility in the price, I don't want to be another offer just like the ones that were turned down, because that'll waste everybody's time. So were they all
Yeah.
similar in price, or?
Well, yeah, they were fairly similar in price. They were in the same ballpark.
Okay, so is that not a strong message from the market then? Like, are your guys really motivated?
Good point. Well, you know, I'm just their agent, and I'm trying to advise them. I don't know whether I should be divulging that.
So the house has been on the market for like a month and a half, and in this market, if they've had 3 offers that were very similar, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to figure out if
Okay.
now they'll be a little more
Yeah,
receptive
perhaps,
to
yeah.
the 4th one.
Yeah, because I have been trying to talk to them, I've been trying to talk them through all these scenarios, and so why don't you present your offer and then we can see.
Okay, where are they going? Like,
Oh, they're going to, where did you say they're going to, Florida? Florida.
oh, okay, have they
Yeah.
bought already?
They're
down
moving
there?
out of state.
Yeah, no, they haven't yet.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're a little bit more
So-
flexible with
so-
their time.
Yeah, so they're not as
They're not
motivated. It's
desperate,
not-
yeah.
no, understandable. Is there anything else that, you know, wasn't in those other offers that they're really looking for that, you know, maybe we can help with if it's not around price?
Well, I was just wondering if there's something you were looking for.
Well, one thing, I'll just tell you a bit about my buyers. They're moving here from out of state with their family, so they're kind of anxious to get settled. But they're leaving their appliances in their current home. If we include the appliances, is this going to be a problem?
Maybe not a problem, but maybe perhaps, I don't know what the term is, maybe perhaps consider that when you're putting your price in.
Yeah, we're also considering the fact that the carpeting needs to be changed in the main floor. So I'm just wondering if your clients have factored that into their pricing in terms of what they're willing to accept?
I don't
It
think
says the
ours
house
said
require,
that.
on the scenario,
Yeah.
the house requires new
Okay, yours
carpeting.
did, yeah. Oh, okay, so even for the,
And a
Selling?
new garage door opener, yeah.
oh, okay.
So I'm just wondering if the market's giving
Oh,
them
yeah.
pricing that's all the
Yeah.
same, they're probably factoring in that carpet and that garage door opener.
Yeah,
So I'm just thinking, if we put in our price factoring that in and we sort of end up with all the other guys and we're actually gonna ask for the appliances just because it's really awkward for my guys, do you think that's going to be a problem?
yeah, so originally, in terms of the appliances, we wanted to give them to my daughter, who just had a divorce, and we felt bad because we wanted to include them.
Oh, so the
We wanted-
appliances are gonna be an issue for your guys?
They would have been, so in this case, if you can consider that as a negotiation. So in other
Okay.
words, what I'd like, I don't know, do I have to spell it out for you? Like, I'm so
I've
like read.
already shown in the listing that the appliances are excluded,
Yeah,
so that would, you need to take that into consideration if your clients are looking to have that in
Yeah,
the.
okay,
so that's a good way of
well,
saying
it would seem to me that, you know, if your clients are trying to get to Florida, they probably want a quick closing. What were the closing dates like on the other ones? Will that make a difference?
Not really, actually. They're very flexible. They don't have to move quickly, and right now they're just pretty specific on what they believe the value of the home is worth.
Okay, so they're not phased by the closing date, but my guys, because they're moving in from out of town, will need a quick closing date. Will that be a problem for them?
No, it's something that's definitely flexible.
Okay.
It's just not a deciding factor for our clients.
Okay, so the issue is going to be the cost of the appliances then, because if my guys just don't need them because they can't move theirs and yours want to exclude them, then the price that we put in our offer is going to take into account the fact that we need the carpeting, the garage door opener, and we're going
Yeah.
to need to buy some new.
Yeah.
Okay, so that said and done, I'm going to go draft the offer and I'll send it off to you guys.
Perfect, we look forward to receiving it.
But I would even like say like what I was trying to get at, and I'm not sure if it was right or wrong. Is like just like you could put in the offer like, you know, bump it up a little bit, like I'd like you to bump it up a bit, just considering the fact that I could leave the appliances for you, like maybe a couple thousand, is what I was trying to hint at, but not without saying it. You know what I mean? 'Cause I don't think
Yeah,
I'm supposed
you
to say
did.
it.
So the way.
Did I kind of do that?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
did.
you did, but the problem is, if I do that before I put it in my offer,
Yeah.
so if I write, so what I would do is, from my buyer's perspective, is we're gonna offer $340, which takes into account the garage door opener and the carpeting, and we're going to write in that we are including the appliances. I'm gonna make them take it out, because when they take that out, because it's excluded, then the price that they sign back at is gonna have to reflect that they've just taken something
Oh,
from
okay.
me.
Oh,
You see what I'm
okay,
saying?
yeah.
And what you were looking at in that case is that you then would have to, as the agent, sell that to your sellers, who are quite specific that they are going to give those appliances,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So part of that is being able to
The
say,
negotiation.
I know that they want to keep them, but that's something that I would have to go back and have that
Yeah.
conversation once you're ready to put an offer forward.
Yeah.
So then you're gonna sign it back at whatever price, because we're only 10,000 apart. So let's say they're gonna take out the appliances and they're kind of set on their price. So let's say they're gonna sign it back at $348 and take the appliances out. And then you're gonna say, well, you know, without the appliances, I'm gonna need a little more money because we have to buy them, you can keep them, but now my guys are moving and they have to take this on. So it helps you justify your price being a little lower than you might otherwise have had to go up at as the buyer.
Yeah.
Might fly, might not fly.
Yeah.
And how you position it with the buyers, that we can try for this, but they said it way off the bat, it was excluded. So we'll see if we can get some ground on that, but don't count on it. It's about sort of setting expectations from the buy side.
And the only other thing I would have added in, just because we had that conversation, was asking you about the comps that got you to the 350, given the three prices were all lower,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, asking for the
So what
comps,
comps, because when I'm looking
Spoke
at
to
it,
them, yeah.
in addition to what needs to be done repair-wise,
Yeah.
I'm, seeing
Yeah.
that they're more around the three.
But it's not only the comps, because it doesn't sound like those three offers were in competition. It's also, you have to put the comps in relationship to the percent to ask sale. Because if things are normally going at 98%, then 340 is a good offer because it's within the 98%.
Right.
So
Okay.
you'd be more confident that they're going to accept that, and you can justify that when you're going back at it. Like,
Got it, okay.
so it's not just the net price; it's the pricing strategy around how they
So
price
I
it.
guess could that be the, when you ask the question, like, how low were they within 98% of asking, or are they a lot lower than 95? You would ask it that way maybe?
Yeah, you could just say, were they below the percent? I've noticed the percent ask is about 98%. Were they like within that realm and they're still not accepting it, or?
Yeah, okay.
Because then you're not talking specific prices.
So you sometimes, when you're an agent, you sometimes go at it from the point of view of what percentage is it selling at? And that's listed, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's on all
Okay.
the listings, yeah. Because you need, it's the counter to how we normally look at it, because in our market where it's always above ask, there's sort of, it's mostly art and some science to, okay, well, if there's 3 people at the table versus 5 people at the table versus 7 people at the table, and you're looking at 3% over ask, 5% over ask, 7% over ask, this is the exact reverse of that.
Right.
So this pricing strategy, when you list a home, if you don't think you're gonna get multiples, if you're not in that market, your listing price is gonna have taken into account the average percent of ask, because that's where you're telling your seller you're actually gonna end up. You're not gonna list the price at the house, you're not gonna list the house at the price it's gonna sell for.
Or you can take the Robert Greenberg, Harvey Callis approach and list it 20% under market value.
And
Which
see
he's
where the market
openly
puts
said.
it. Yeah, and then see where the market puts it.
Yeah.
Which is when people try to execute that and the market's not doing that, because that's a very neighborhood specific thing, and all of a sudden, then you wake up the next day and it was your scenario, now you're 100,000, your new list price is $100,000 over what last week's list price, and you try to explain that to a buyer and they think you're out of your mind. If it didn't sell at that price, why do they think they're gonna get that price?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the psychology to our market is very unique. And that's one thing I like about KW is because when you go down to family reunion in different places and you look at the American market or different markets from ours that are probably more normal on a global scale other than Vancouver and Toronto, it gives you a different perspective because we really,
We're anomalies. We tend to be anomalies.
yeah, we're very much an anomaly. So when you're dealing with Americans moving to Toronto and you're trying to explain to them as a buyer what the process is gonna look like, they kind of look at you like you're out of your mind.
Yeah. My apologies. I had to jump out and take that call.
And no problem. It's Friday afternoon, so
Thank you so much.
there you go.
Thank you so much.